Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Maine-ly Animals on LRTV. I'm your host, Bobby Silcott, and today we're going to be talking with Ron Jones, and Ron Jones is the CCART liaison for Cumberland County, and you're with the Maine Emergency Management. Is that?
Cumberland County Emergency Management.
Cumberland
So it's
County.
one of my responsibilities is to provide that link between the Cumberland County Animal Response Team, that is an all-volunteer team, and the county itself. And the county EMA, Emergency Management Agency Office, provides support to the team in the form of funding and training and equipment and a place to meet there in our office in the bunker. And we also tie directly into MEMA, the Maine Emergency Management Agency. So anything that comes either from the team that needs to go to us to the state, or vice versa, anything, any edict or something along those lines that MEMA may create to come down to the team, or even a request. Oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but a few times we've had requests from MEMA to provide additional CART team support to other counties. So,
And tell our viewers, what does CART mean?
CART is Community or County Animal Response Team. This concept became necessary after the Hurricane Katrina debacle that was really telling, because so many people, about I think it was over 40% of folks during Katrina did not evacuate because they couldn't take their pets. And those people who did take their pets or attempt to take their pets were turned down by the authorities. You can't put your dog on this bus. We can't take your cat to the shelter. So many people stayed behind. The cascading effect of that was these people are in their homes in the flood, and now we have to rescue them. So it put an undue strain on a lot of very limited resources at the time, because the breadth of Katrina, if you remember correctly, was 4 states. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and even into Florida. So because of that, the extent of the event, resources, personnel, specialty personnel, the rescuers, was pretty scarce. And after that, the Congress and President Bush in 2006 passed what's called the PETS Act. It's a Pet Evacuation and Transportation Standards Act. What that act did was it provided for entities that were doing planning, whether they be state, county, or even local. If you're going to plan for disaster shelters for your people, you must include their pets. During Katrina, there were about 1,800 fatalities, personal fatalities, and about 85,000 pets were unaccounted for. Now contrast that, and that was in 2006, contrast that with Hurricane Camille, which happened in 1969, which coincidentally I happened to be in the military down there, and in the Air Force at Barksdale Air Force Base, and they deployed us down to help New Orleans with the Hurricane Camille. The difference, honestly, was Category 3 hit almost exactly the same spot, but the levees were in much better shape. And the levees didn't get overtopped as they did in Katrina. So after a couple of weeks of us standing by to help out wherever we could, they said, "We're all set. You guys can go home. Thank you very much." And it was a vastly different outcome. I think in Katrina, like I said, there was about 85,000 pets unaccounted for, and about 50 to 70,000 estimated pet deaths. One of the catchment areas for these pets was the Louisiana State Fairgrounds. So they had anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 pets that were unidentified that were brought into this fairground. Now, the unfortunate part of that was unscrupulous people went to the fairgrounds and looked for the designer dogs, the high-end, expensive designer dogs, and went through and said, "Oh, Fluffy, that's my dog. Oh, Sissy, that's my dog."
So it opened the door for some nefarious activity down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
and they have no idea how many were actually literally stolen from this site, which brings up a good point that I know you want to reinforce too, is microchip your pets.
Right.
You know, it's relatively painless, it's relatively inexpensive, and one thing I learned a while ago was that you can microchip cats and other animals, ferrets and things like that.
Right.
So I would encourage folks, even if you have an inside pet, please microchip that animal, because if they get brought to our shelter, we have the microchip readers. And that's one of the first things in our intake triage that we are going to do is microchip that animal to see if we can find an owner. So microchipping is essential.
Right. So you talk about intake. So just to back up just a second, let's say the average person's out there watching, potential disaster happens, and you're able to set up a human disaster shelter at Lake Region High School. Where would the CART team come in to that, say in that scenario? If they had the human shelter at the gym there, would the CART team, say, take advantage of the bus depot next door, or is there something close, or how would that happen? And what would you say if somebody brought it to the shelter? What could they expect doing that?
One of the things our office does is we review these shelters. Lake Region High School is one of them. And it happens to be what we designate as a regional shelter. The meaning of a regional shelter is that it's an all-inclusive, all-accompanying shelter. In other words, it's handicap accessible, ADA compliant, they accept it's pet friendly, they will provide, they, meaning the global disaster response community, us, the Red Cross, and some of the other agencies, will provide translators, we'll provide the typical dormitory space that you see in all of the Red Cross ads for sheltering. And part of that is we get together with the Red Cross and with the school staff, and we do a review of the building prior to any, what we call blue sky times. And part of that review is we look at spaces within the school and decide this would be a good place for the pets. We don't want to put it in the auditorium, nice chairs and carpeting and what have you.
Sure.
Oftentimes we'll use places like the wood shop or the lab, or some of the schools may have a BOTEC program, and it's, industrial sort of settings so that we don't harm the facility. We also take great care to put down tarps and plastic, and we leave it better than we found it is our motto. So the intake piece for CART would be dependent on the facility, but it would be clearly marked that, pet intake here. We bring the folks in with their animals. We will identify the individual, the pet owner. We'll try to identify the pet, microchip, etc. One of the important things that people can bring with them is their pet documentation, their vet records, because if they don't have current rabies identified and some of the other vaccines that are required, they're likely to get them again before we can put them in the general pet population, because the last thing we want to do is create a secondary crisis by spreading parvo or rabies or some other highly communicable companion animal disease in a shelter where we're supposed to be taking care of these animals. So it's vital that folks obviously keep their pets' vaccinations up, make sure that they bring a copy of their pets' records with them. One of the other things we want folks to bring is what we call a Go Kit. And that Go Kit is fairly simple. It consists of pet medications, if you have your pets are on medications, food for the pet for about 3 or 4 days. The same with water. You can bring bottled water, that's fine. But one of the things that we find is if we ask for pet food to support the shelter operation, we are going to get what we're going to get.
Right.
If your dog is on Purina Pro Plan, don't anticipate that we're going to have Purina Pro Plan available for that dog.
Right.
So bring 3 or 4 days worth of food. It doesn't have to be a 50-pound bag, unless you got a St. Bernard.
Right.
But bring food, bring water, bring medicine, bring the pet's ID, the pet's medical records, and some toys and familiar things that the pet maybe a favorite blanket or a favorite chew toy or something like that, because unfortunately these pets are going to be in a crate for possibly an extended period of time. You as the pet owner are going to be responsible for walking the animal, feeding the animal, cleaning the crate, and what have you. We will provide the space to keep your pet safe, and we will also provide security for that space so we don't end up like they did down in the fairgrounds in Louisiana with people walking in and just going, oh, there's my Fluffy, you know. So that's pretty much how, and it's the pet shelter we endeavor to keep within reasonable distance. We try to co-locate them, meaning that the Red Cross will have you put up in, say, in Lake Region, in the gymnasium, the dormitory.
The humans would be.
The humans would be. And the pets would be in potentially the industrial arts section, but it's all on the same campus or all in the same building even. So we make sure, we endeavor to make sure that that has as close as we can keep the pet and their people. We do. Part of that we really don't think about is you're in a stressful situation. This is a disaster situation. You don't know if your home is going to be there when you get back. So if you have the companionship of your animal and vice versa, it takes everything down a notch. You know, you have an opportunity to be with your pet, take your pet out for a walk, just maybe if the weather is decent, you know, be out in some fresh air and so on. So it's psychologically for the pet and the person, it's really important to keep us together as much as we can.
Yeah, and today with phones, it's so easy, maybe a photo of not only your pet, but maybe you with your pet for positive identification for that. So just to stress it for the folks at home, you talked about a Go Bag, a Go Kit. It's up to us as individuals, myself included, all of us, it's up to us to do that. You guys are going to provide an environment, but the person bringing those animals to you is going to have with them everything that it is going to need to take care of that animal, and we are going to have to do that ourselves. At
least for the first 3 or 4 days. Like I said, we don't expect you to bring a 50-pound bag of dog food with you, but 3 or 4 days worth of your pet's food. And also, we talk about the pet Go Bag. We need a people Go Bag too, with very similar items. Your ID, your medications if you take them, some things that might be favorite snacks of yours that might help. The Red Cross is pretty good about bringing food to the facility, and that's one of their responsibilities. But as a dear friend of mine always says, a shelter is a lifeboat. It's not a cruise ship. You are not going to get the same service in a disaster shelter as you think you're going to get in the Hilton. That's just not going to happen. So making sure that you are prepared. One of the other things that we recommend for your personal Go Kit is cash. Because if there's a widespread power outage, up here in '98, they didn't have power for almost a month.
The ice storm.
The ice storm of '98 didn't have power for almost a month. ATMs need power. gas stations need power. When we surveyed gas stations, as an example, the Quick Mart kind of gas stations, we asked them if they had generator power. And they said, oh yeah, sure. And we said, well, does it operate all the pumps? And they said, oh, heck no, it operates the coolers.
Right.
We don't care about the gas pumps. We make our money from what's in the coolers.
Right.
And that was kind of a
little bit of an eye-opener from their
wow,
perspective.
you know?
Right, right.
Here's this gas that
Right.
we need to have, if nothing else, generators.
Right.
And yet a lot of these places say, yeah, our generators take care of our coolers.
Yeah.
Which brings up the larger stores, the Hannafords and those kinds of chain stores. If there's a long-term, what they feel to be a long-term disaster, they're more likely to take their product off of their shelves, the stuff that needs to be refrigerated or frozen, and put it in tractor-trailer boxes out back. They're not typically going to stay open if it's a protracted event.
Right.
Because the power that those coolers and freezers take is an immense amount of power, and it would be a terrific expense for each and every store to have a generator big enough to run those. So kind of their corporate philosophy is, we'll keep the stuff good, and then when the disaster's over, we get power back, we'll put it back out on the shelves.
Right.
So.
Right. So the folks at home, we're talking about what maybe our personal responsibility is. And it's kind of a dual-edged sword for your team members, because now you may need team members to be deployed somewhere. And of course, they've got their personal life and they've got their animals. And so folk out there that are watching, this doesn't happen magically. It takes a team of people to do that. Yep. If someone's out there thinking about, well, maybe I'd like to plug into this, what does it take for someone to become a CART team member that's able to be deployed?
Well, first of all, your willingness to participate is invaluable. We provide the training that you will need. You talk about CART team members. We've had attorneys be CART team members. We have a couple of veterinarians who are current CART team members, paramedics, firefighters, animal lovers. We've got some folks that work in the brick and mortar shelters as part of our team. And so all in all, between the incident command system training that's required for all volunteers in a disaster and our animal-specific training, I would say anywhere from 10 to 12 hours of training, a lot of which can be done online at your convenience. And then we do, obviously, internal training, as you all know, providing us with our pet first aid and CPR. And we always look for other opportunities to work with other agencies and entities. We've done some work with other county animal response teams. We've done some work with the state animal welfare services. We've done work out of state during Hurricane Sandy. We deployed 3 or 4 of our members down there to help out, and they participated with the Humane Society folks down there, operating a shelter for I think they were down there for 7 days. So
let's say somebody's watching and they're thinking, what's it going to cost them besides time? Obviously, there's a time commitment if someone wants to be. Do they have to use their own money to do any of this? Or?
But the biggest cost is passion. You know, we really want to encourage folks who may have a passion to help out. There's no cost to any of the training. We provide through our funding being the Emergency Management Agency. We provide any funding for the training. We did training a number of years ago called the Technical Large Animal Emergency Response Training.
Yeah.
I brought in a couple of veterinarians from out of state with their beautiful, beautiful horses, and we spent 3 days, a day in classroom and 2 days literally out on a farm, working with these amazingly trained horses who would let a bunch of strangers, poke them and prod them with hoses and ropes and all kinds of things and lift them up off the ground, and it was just an amazing training. It was a fairly expensive training, but it was across a bunch of disciplines. We had firefighters there from other towns. We had EMTs there from other towns. We had CART members from other CART agencies in the state. And so it was a group effort, and that was really important because no team can do it by themselves. You know, our team is fairly robust. We have the typical roster of people, and because of the way volunteerism works, we can typically depend on about 25% of our roster being available at any given time, because a lot of our folks still do work in public safety. So they're out there already. One of the things that we pledged for public safety in general is that if you're working and you have pets and you're having to evacuate your family, we will take care of your pets. No questions asked. So they found in Katrina that, for those folks who may remember, about 50% of the New Orleans Police Department went home because they said, my family is impacted.
Right.
My number one loyalty is to my family, so sorry, but I'm going home.
Right.
We've learned a lesson from that. So now one of the priorities for disaster planning is also planning to take care of public safety. The folks that are on duty will be assured that your family members, wife and children, husband and children, pets, etc., will be taken care of while you're out there taking care of the disaster. So that's paramount to our philosophy, if you will, is we're going to take care of the public safety people who are taking care of the rest of us.
Right. Right. So say somebody walks in, they got a bearded dragon. Is that a type of animal that you can bring in?
Yes, and let me kind of run down through the list. You make a good point. We typically deal with what's called companion animals. Those things that you may have in your home, your bunnies and your dogs and cats and rabbits and what have you. We do deal with exotics. I don't do snakes, right up front. I do not do snakes, not me personally. I'll find you somebody, but I don't do snakes.
Someone on the team can.
Someone on the team can do the snakes. I don't do snakes. But we will take a certain number of exotics. Wild animals, absolutely not. Well, we just can't.
For obvious reasons.
For obvious reasons.
Right.
And that's where the game wardens come in.
Yeah.
And birds, we're prepared for birds, reptiles, you know, the companion animals, and I would say small farm animals. If you bring in your barnyard chickens, your backyard chickens, we could take care of those. The smaller farm animals, small, say a small pig or something like that. But if you get into the realm of a 400 or 500 pound potbelly pig or you know, something like that, we just wouldn't be able to do that. That's where you, as that animal owner, if you had a couple of horses in a garage that you turned into a stable, you need to be prepared to take care of those animals.
Right.
The commercial farmers already have a plan.
Right.
They know that they're not going to be able to move their 500 head of dairy cattle 100 miles away by trailer because there's just no way that's going to happen. So they already have a plan for backup power and backup feed and a place on their property to more contain the animals rather than just allowing them to run loose in the pasture. So, and they have to do that because otherwise the banks won't approve the loans for their business plans. So
all that's got to be a part of it.
You know, all those little backyard farmers are the ones that we worry about them not thinking about planning for the chickens and the ducks and what have you.
Right. Now, my understanding, every county in the state, does every county have a CART team, or are they connected with a adjoining county or another county too?
Right now, I think we currently have 6 teams, 5 or 6, and they're scattered throughout the state. And ideally, we'd love to have a CART team for every county, but a lot of times it's just not feasible because, you know, Cumberland County has a high population, and because of that, we have more human resources available to stand up these kinds of volunteer teams. And the CART isn't the only volunteer team that we have. We have three other teams that are all volunteers. One is a communications team. They're ham radio operators, and they help us in times of loss of communications. Because we are population rich here, it's easier for us to stand up a team, whereas Hancock County or Waldo County or Washington County, they just don't have the general population to draw from,
Right.
much less the closeness, if you will, of the population like it is here in Cumberland County. It's 20 miles from one end of the county to the other, really.
Yeah, right.
And in Aroostook County, you can go 20 miles between houses, and never mind towns.
Right, yeah.
So that makes it hard for those communities. But because we are a what's called an emergency management response team for the state, we fall under MEMA's sort of guidance, if you will. They could send us or members of our team anywhere in the state that, if Hancock County said, hey, we're going to need to open a shelter up here because we've had our own ice storm and we want it to be a pet-friendly shelter, can you help us out with some folks?
Right.
And we would do that to the best of our ability. And York County, who has a CART team, would do that. I'm trying to think of one of the other teams.
Oxford County.
Oxford, yeah, Oxcart.
Yeah.
Would probably. So you could go to Hancock County and find team members from 3 or 4 different teams.
Right.
And possibly even out of state.
Right.
Because that's one of the things that this association with MEMA allows is if New Hampshire called, or in the case of Sandy, our team members went down to New Jersey at their at New
Devastated
Jersey's request.
down there, yeah.
And so, that as much as we sometimes malign government entities, the participation with and support by FEMA makes it a whole lot easier for these kinds of teams to go all over the country. And it's beneficial to train together and work together, because then when you have that disaster, you have that sort of face-to-face recognition, and you know what each other's capabilities are, and so you just go and do.
Right. So that's a product of Pets Evacuation Transportation Standards. Is it's a standardized somewhat that you can go from here to wherever in the United States and plug into that.
Yeah, that Pets Act is a federal law, so it's applicable to all of the states and the territories.
Right. Yeah. Now, so your contact information, what's the best way, not you personally, but what would be the best, say someone come to the county and they want to plug into this, or they just want to get some general information, what's the best?
Couple of ways. You can get on to the Cumberland County website and find the emergency management page, and then in there is some card information along with a link to the application. My personal contact information in the office is pretty simple. It's jones@cumberlandcounty.org. The phone number is 207-892-6785, and that's the office number. And if it rings in, it might be likely that I answer the phone, or they would at least transfer to me.
Yeah. Now, and some of your resources here, we're looking these over, not your resources, but resources available to folks out there if the stuff does happen to get in need of. What are some of the organizations and contact information?
Well, one of our biggest partners is the Red Cross, and so their email is www.redcross.org. 211 Maine. 211 Maine is a resource phone number. And by calling 211 Maine, you can find out where your local disaster shelter is going to be. When we decide to stand up a shelter anywhere in the state, that information is given to the Maine Emergency Management Agency, who then transmits it to the 211 Maine folks, and they will make it available. So if you were wondering, you lived on the coast there in Agunquit, and we knew there was going to be a really big storm surge, and you needed to know where to go for a pet-friendly shelter. 211 Maine will have that information, which also brings up a personal preparedness piece that I want to address. Is part of your plan for yourself and your pet's evacuation is find out what pet-friendly hotels and motels may be in your area. Find out what friend or relative who might live a ways away and perhaps more out of the disaster area, up high and dry, let's say,
right,
who might be willing to take you and your family on, because sometimes the shelters may not be sufficient enough, either in number or size, to take everyone. Sometimes folks may not like the idea of going to a shelter. And that's your personal choice if you don't want to go to a shelter. But
there better be a plan B.
There had better be a plan B.
Right.
Because putting the rescuers at risk, a failure to plan on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part.
Right.
if you want to put it pretty succinctly. So
right.
We have those folks that are more comfortable working with the people, the public ed events, and so great. If you're a good person, public speaker, or someone who likes to meet and greet people and pass on valuable information, we've got a spot for you.
Right.
If you're one of those folks who really is passionate about animals and is knowledgeable about animals and animal behavior, we got a spot for you as well. If you are a person who likes to do the logistics, find the pet food, find the water, find additional crates or those kinds of things, the logistics of the operation. That's huge, because without the logistics, and if it's a protracted event, we're going to keep needing those items. So it's not just a one and done.
Right.
We bring in a bag of dog food and declare victory.
Right.
We may need a truckload of dog food. So, if you're more of an administration or a logistics kind of person, we have a spot for you as well.
So somebody's not going to get there and probably be stuck there for days on end. We're going to turn over some people. So it's not just, like say somebody goes there and stays there maybe the whole time, that these folks are going to be needed on a revolving basis potentially, maybe some rotation.
Again, back to Mother FEMA. One of the tenets of FEMA is what's called operational periods. And it's going to depend on the local capabilities and the local need. But for emergency management, an operational period is typically 12 hours. The Red Cross uses an 8-hour operational period, but they overlap, and that's, it's all seamless. So you might be expected to participate on a 12-hour basis because you need rest. You need to break from the hectic environment of a shelter. So you might come and work 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., go home, rest and recuperate, make sure your family's taken care of, and someone would come in to replace you from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And we typically, I think Red Cross's national standard is you deploy for a couple of weeks. And so depending on circumstances, at least here in the state, I would anticipate that a 2-week commitment would be the outside. Thankfully, we're pretty resilient people here in the state of Maine. So for one of our disasters to last much longer than 2 weeks is really an outlier. I mean, the ice storm in '98 was really the last one that
anomaly, to say the least. Wow,
thank goodness.
That was quite an event. And typically maybe it's not necessarily a statewide event, and even the Canada, that ice storm, I mean, that was far-reaching. It could be more of a localized type of thing. Anything from flooding to ice, possible tornado. These types of things could come in and maybe cause something for a shelter to be activated.
Yeah. Well, the last one that we did was over the Christmas holiday when we had the storm, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and then the day after. 5 communities got together, 5 local communities here got together and said, you know, we're going to potentially have widespread power outages, so we need to put together a shelter. So the 5 fire chiefs, who are typically also the local EMA directors, sat down and said, well, where can we do this? And St. Joseph's College there in Standish stepped up and said, we've got a pretty good facility here, you know, nice field house, you know, why don't you consider, we'd be happy to help you out in that respect. And so we brought crates and animal items to the St. Joseph's, the Alphonse field house there. And the Red Cross brought some staff, and we brought up some cots. And so we opened up a shelter there for the anticipated residents who might need to shelter from those 5 communities. St. Joseph's was extremely gracious and supportive. 1, for offering this beautiful facility. 2, for offering their staff. They said, facilities people, you got them if you need them. Their security people were there. They sort of covered the desk, if you will, at the Alphon for people who might be coming in to find their way into the campus and what have you. So it was really, really a good public-private partnership.
Right.
You know, thankfully, we didn't have a lot of folks show up, but just the fact that we were able to put it together on fairly short notice and have it up and running by that evening at about 7, 8 o'clock, we were ready to accept shelter clients if they showed up. I think was a testament to the cooperation of the 5 communities who, in fire service terminology, are mutual aid partners.
Right.
So if there's a fire in one of those communities, the likelihood of any one of the other communities coming in with their people and their apparatus to participate is fairly high. So they worked pretty seamlessly. We had fire personnel from a couple of the communities help us do the setup and the tear down. So that was a perfect example of that. Like I say, that public-private community partnership that went into setting this shelter up, and it was relatively seamless.
So situational adaptability maybe is key. You got to have the ability to maybe zig and zag a little, and maybe do things that is not necessarily what one would expect, but you're able to deploy to different areas and different circumstances.
We try to, I mentioned earlier, we have regional shelters. We have 11 regional shelters in Cumberland County. And I'll call these kind of mega shelters, where we can focus a lot of folks and have a lot of capacity. As an example, the East Point Christian Church there in South Portland. Their facility is 93,000 square feet.
Wow.
And they have committed staff, they've committed the facility, anything that they can provide us to help setting up that shelter to serve the citizens of Cumberland County, because these are regional shelters. You know, if a shelter is in Lake Region, you're not limited to the 5 communities that basically make up the school district. You know, if somebody needs sheltering, nobody's getting turned away at the door because, oh, you're from a different town or a different county. No, that never happens. That does not happen.
Right.
You need shelter, you'll have shelter.
Yeah.
The smaller communities have identified that they want to do this sheltering thing themselves. They want to take care of their people. They want to demonstrate that, you know, our community's commitment is to our people. So we've had 2 or 3, 4 local communities want to set up local shelters. You know, the town of Bridgeton wants to do a local shelter. They're willing to participate in the regional shelter here at the Lake Region High School, but here in town, They want to be able to take care of the local folks. You know, if there were a small part of town that was flooded, couldn't get back to their homes, Bridgeton wants to be able to take care of those folks here.
Right.
So we've worked with Todd Perot, who's the local EMA director here in town, to identify some suitable facilities. There are certain things that you have to have. Obviously, you have to have bathrooms. You have to have space enough for folks to put a cot down and be able to sleep. We have to be able to feed folks, you know, whether it's food that's brought in or food that's prepared on site. So there are some specific criteria. Generator power, or the ability to accept a generator for power, is critical, because, you know, we want people to be able to stay warm and have, you know, lights and things like that, as much comfort as we possibly can in a situation that is, you know, adverse to their normal day-to-day living.
Yeah. So next we hear is FEMA.gov. That's another resource that folks can reach out to. And Ready.gov.
Ready.gov. Those are both preparedness sites. Ready.gov particularly has a lot of individual, like preparing for folks with disabilities. You know, if you have
their accommodations can vary widely.
If you have a family member who's confined to a wheelchair, one of the things we're finding now is so many people are being sent home from hospitals with fairly complicated medical devices that need power. Place to charge batteries for battery-operated medical devices. Folks who have the CPAP, the nighttime breathing apparatus that helps them breathe at night, battery operated. Power, you know, 110 operated. So power is essential. And so one of the things that we also encourage folks to do, while it's a pretty expensive proposition, is if you have a family member in those kinds of circumstances, considering getting a backup generator at home. Because I had a situation there in Westbrook where I got a call from a lady who lost her power in her home, and she said, I need to be evacuated because I have a severe debilitating disease and I'm in an electric hospital bed that I have to have because of this disease. And now an electric hospital bed weighs about 1,000 pounds. And they are assembled on site. You know, you don't wheel one of those through the front door and declare victory.
Right.
So we were kind of scrambling as to what we might be able to do, and one of the group that was in the Emergency Operations Center said, do you think we could get her a generator? Wow.
Seems like an obvious question.
You know, the simple answer to a complex question.
Right.
And so we said, well, why not?
Right.
So this poor lady was able to stay at home where she has all of her needs and comforts and her familiarity with just the addition of a generator.
Right.
We got it there and got it tied into her electrical panel so that she could use most of the things in her home. She couldn't use everything,
Right.
but it was enough to power her electric bed and keep her lights on for her and keep her refrigerator and her stove working.
Right.
And other than that, she said, I'm happy, I'm good. I don't need anything else until this power situation is over. And we sent crews out to monitor the generator, refuel it for her, and make sure that, you know, everything was still okay.
Safely exhausted and so on. Although they're very important, safe operation. I mean,
it's huge.
Yeah, it is, which is another topic. But that's great that you folks did all of that for her. The ability to give her what she needed, that must have just been huge to her. I mean,
Yep, and again, that's one of those things that happens in the Community Emergency Operations Center. You bring in all the important people in the community and you sit down and you think about those kinds of needs. Or if someone presents that kind of a need, you say, okay, how do we solve this? Can we use community resources to solve this? One of the mantras from FEMA is all disasters are local, meaning that every disaster has local impact, whether it makes it on the national news or not. A classic example is the folks in East Palestine, Ohio, with that train derailment and the toxic. That was really very, very local to those folks.
Right.
It was splashed all over the national news, but the impact was for a few thousand people in a fairly small area. But that impact was huge, and that impact is going to be long-lasting.
Life-changing for us.
Life-changing, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say that first and foremost, get to know who your local emergency management director is, because he or she is going to be the linchpin to the emergency response in your community. Typically, like I said, in most towns, it's the fire chief. I happen to know that here in town, it's Todd Perot, and my hat is off to Todd because he is always diligently working towards making sure that emergency management in the town of Bridgeton is the best that it can be. You know, and like I say, we've worked with him on identifying shelter spaces here in town. We've worked with him on developing the town's emergency operations plan, which covers the town and everyone and everything in it. So they are a dedicated group of people. Every town in the state of Maine is, by state statute, has to have one. Like I said, oftentimes it's the fire chief. In a few cases, here in Bridgeton, it's Todd Perot. There's a gentleman in Cape Elizabeth who's not the fire chief, as an example. A gentleman in Harpswell who's not the fire chief, but they are the local emergency management director.
Right, and they're plugged into all of these things we're talking about and constantly trying to keep their plan updated and ready to serve the local folk there, it sounds like.
So my challenge to your viewers is make a pet plan, make a personal plan, and keep it updated.
Yeah.
Don't just put the dog food in a closet somewhere and 2 or 3 years later, after it's expired, say, oh, well, gee, we can't use this.
Right.
Keep the medications current, keep the information current, and plan.
Right, and all that information's available on the MEMA website?
On our Cumberland County Emergency Management website, on the links that I've given you to ready.gov, to FEMA.gov, to American Red Cross, 211 Maine also has some other information on there. They're really kind of a social services, if you will, clearinghouse. So if you have a question, they are not adverse to answering a question and giving you a resource or a link to a resource for a question that you might have.
So I just ask in the end here, getting near the end, you've been doing this a while. What do you find is the most challenging aspect of this from your own personal?
I think the most challenging is finding people. Volunteers are tough for everybody to find. We've got, parents who are working a couple of jobs apiece. And when they're not working, they're taking their kids to sporting events, to school events. And so time, especially personal family time, is so precious. And we have to respect that. But the other side of that is, for us to be able to provide all of these kinds of services that communities and individuals need and deserve, we have to have people. Because if we were to pay the 30 or so people we have in the Cumberland County team, even if it was on a deployment basis, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that communities don't have. And so folks who want to give back to their community or want to just give to their community can do so by volunteering.
Right.
And I, selfishly would love to have you volunteer for CART, but look at other volunteer opportunities within your town. I know Todd here in Bridgeton could use people to help out with his local sheltering efforts that he's doing here. He's going to need people to staff these shelters. People are going to need to know how to set up the cots and how to take care of the folks and how to provide those shelter services that people would need here in Bridgeton.
So they don't necessarily need to be, in our case here with the animal, they don't need to be an animal expert.
No.
So if someone's sitting at home and they're thinking, well, I really don't know that much. No, come on in, talk to you folks, and there's something for them to do.
Yep, talk to your local EMA director and find out if you're a civic group, even if it's, a knitting club. If there's a group of you folks that are friends and work together, play together, recreate together, think about another thing that you could do that would be a direct benefit to your community, and that is volunteering to support that community.
Yeah.
And for those of you who already do support your community in some volunteer effort, thank you very much. Because without volunteers, this whole thing doesn't get off the ground.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because a lot of people don't necessarily do these types of things for recognition, but I think it is important to thank them, and that their efforts are really appreciated and they have an impact on folks when they're in really need. Yeah. So on the other side of that, what do you find, what's the most rewarding thing? What gives you that warm fuzzy and at the end of the day doing what you're doing?
Just knowing, and as an example, seeing, I was directly involved in the St. Joseph's setup, but seeing the folks who came in to the shelter, they were cold, it was dark, the wind was blowing like the dickens. They were elderly folks, so they were quite concerned about that whole bad weather, trees falling, power out, it's cold. But to see them come in and sit down there in St. Joe's, they had sort of a common area off of the gymnasium that was just like a big lounge. And these folks were sitting there and conversing with each other. And one younger gentleman who came in, and his one request is, could I please get a shower? I haven't had a shower in a couple of days, and I really need a shower. Sure. The showers are right down here, and so just that sort of sense of relief, you could see it in their faces and hear it in their voices that, okay, I'm in pretty good shape here,
right,
until this thing gets over and done with.
Right. Kind of a reset for this person, maybe just a recharge to say, wow, this is great, I'm ready to go to work.
Yeah, so for me to be part of that, and to provide that sense of security for these folks is that sort of takeaway that I have that really makes me appreciate the efforts of everybody involved, not just our office, which is paid staff, or even our volunteers, but the community in general.
Yeah, wow. Phew. And sitting here right now, things are fairly calm here, and when you folks are optivated, I didn't say the Q word anyway.
Do not say calm, okay? Because that will be.
Well, you guys are ready though, and
ready as we can be.
Yeah. So there you have it, folks. I want to thank Ron Jones, C-CART liaison for the Cumberland County Emergency Management Agency, for doing what you do, what you've done for years, and what you're going to do when the time is needed. So please extend that to your team and everyone else with the Cumberland County Emergency Management Agency, and on the state level too. I think part of what we should do here today is recognize everyone, even though that's not what you're here for, that we appreciate what you're doing. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll have you back soon, and we'll...
Absolutely, anytime, and glad to help folks understand the process and understand their responsibilities, and also appreciate their willingness to help out, because even your personal preparedness and your pet preparedness helps us, because when you show up at the shelter, we know you're prepared, and that's a couple of less things on our plate that we have to deal with right away.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you again, Ron, and I want to thank you all for watching. I'm your host, Bobby Silcott, and we'll see you next time on Mainly Animals on LRTV.